Well, that just happened. K-Dog's movie review. Madam Web, directed by C.J. Clarkson, stars Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Isabella Marquez, Celeste O'Connor, and Tahar Rahim. Set in Sony's Spider-Verse, the movie is about an EMT named Cassandra Webb who starts having superpower-like visions of the future. She eventually has a vision of 3 young women being murdered, so it's up to her to save them and change their fate. This is a brand new channel, so I'll just say this quickly. I'm a superhero fan. I haven't read comic books, but I've seen a lot of superhero movies, and Spider-Man is by far my favorite. He's the GOAT in my mind. As far as Spider-Man lore goes, I know little. So I went into this movie knowing absolutely nothing about Madam Web or any of the characters. I don't even know if she's a real comic book superhero. I didn't watch any of the trailers beforehand because I heard they were deceptive. So I went into this completely blind. And I gotta say,
that is one big pile of shit.
this movie is frustratingly boring, mind-numbingly dull. Look, the market is oversaturated with superheroes right now. Movies, TV shows, video games, comics, books, etc. Even as a fan, I'm kind of burnt out. So when you release a movie, you gotta make sure it's fresh and leaves a mark on the audience. Give us characters we care about, a story that engages us, a villain that we either love to hate or sympathize with, that's exciting and interesting to watch. Or give me monkey brain CGI-filled action, cool costumes, explosions. But this movie is just odd. It fails to do any of those things. It's set in the early 2000s, I think 2003, and it feels like a movie from that time. Too scared to go over the top, so it just exists in this flatline, boring state. It feels like it was written by an AI program.
Computer, give me superhero movie with Terminator vibes.
My God. All right, so let's get into it. The characters. The beginning I was actually fine with. Dakota Johnson's character is someone who gets along with people, has some friends, but struggles to truly connect or really care. Just an adult with a job vibing. Low-key acting on pure charisma. That's fine for the beginning stages of a movie. But when the villain presents himself and the action ramps up, there's no bump in performance. She stays in the state of not caring. Feels like she's dead inside and there's no emotion behind what she's doing. It's like she knew she was in a boring movie. There's no emotion when shit hits the fan. No change. On paper, there's some development that her character has, but I don't feel it at all with her acting. There's nothing special about our hero that makes me care or engage with them. The same goes for the supporting cast. A lot of these are great actors, but in this movie, they're just seen as the friend or the pregnant one. And they play that note, that same boring note throughout the entire movie. There is no change in emotion when things are actually happening, especially in the third act. There's a scene later in the movie where shit's exploding, cars are flying from the air, and our characters just don't care. There's no emotion behind it. It's so weird. The 3 Spider Girls, I'll refer to them as seen in the promotional material, are okay, I guess. They each have their own personalities, which thank God gave them at least an inch of depth. They grow to like each other, I guess, over the course of the movie, but that's really it. They don't use any of their traits or personalities to enhance the story in any way. They just stick to their one character trait. Again, feels like written by an AI program. They have a little chemistry amongst each other, but between Dakota Johnson and our 3 Spider Girls, I didn't feel any chemistry there. They all felt really disconnected from the movie that they were in, the complete opposite of my experience from Lisa Frankenstein. And the movie tries to convince us that by the end of the movie, they're so close and bonded, but I didn't feel that at all. Now, the villain. My God, was this the worst part of the movie, but also kind of my favorite. This villain is absolute garbage. I'm sure that this actor has been good in other things, but here, he was fucking terrible. There's no personality besides
I'm evil.
Zero charisma at all. He has seemingly cool powers, the powers of Spider-Man, basically, without the web shooters. But he doesn't use them in any exciting way. He's running along a wall for a quick 5 or 10 seconds here or there, but that's it. He just punches or grabs people. He pretty much has one line of dialogue all movie, and that is,
Find them.
They give the guy absolutely nothing to work with. I feel bad for this actor that they were thrown into this trash movie. I say that he was probably my most favorite or entertaining part of the movie because of how bad the ADR was. You could easily tell that he had to go back and re-record all of his lines. His lips did not sync at all with what he said. It was so bad. It also sounded like he was in a recording booth. The inflection of his voice just didn't fit at all with the settings that he was in. It just enhances the feeling that this was made by an AI program. It was so bad. Whenever he talked, the camera was facing away from him because you knew that they re-recorded all of his lines, so it just looked so weird and awkward. And his costume was so boring. There was nothing engaging about the character at all whatsoever. I love a good villain, and he was just bad. This script has no effort or passion put into it. The kernels are there, but the movie just hovers with its initial idea and doesn't go anywhere. We all know what's going to happen by the end of it, which is ironic given the premise of this movie. It also just pumps exposition at us without doing so in an exciting way at all. It does the classic tropes of, "You will find who you are," with the mystical being giving our hero all of the answers that they need to their backstory, putting them in places where they never should have been. And us as the audience, we're just supposed to go along with it and be fine with giving this material in such a boring way. They also let the villain give some exposition, which is horrible because all of his recordings sound so bad. Now, for the sound and music, I've already talked about the main villain with the bad ADR. The rest of the sound is fine. It's passable, which in a superhero movie makes it boring. There's no defining score that makes it epic in any way. I thought I heard hints of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man music, but that just made me cringe. Like, come on, movie, come up with your own stuff. Stop holding on to something from over 20 years ago. They try to hook you in with early 2000s pop culture, but it just feels like a desperate attempt to lift a terrible story. Now, for the visuals, there were a couple of moments where I was actually on board. They try to weave in a lot of spiderweb scenery, whether you're looking through broken glass or different types of shades. And there are a couple moments where our hero is going through their existential figuring out who they are moments, where it looks kind of cool. But beyond that, pretty underwhelming. It sucks because there are some really cool things you could do with this see into the future idea, but it's done in an incredibly boring, non-engaging way. If anything, a lot of the future horrific scenes were unintentionally funny to me. The scenes just happen. There's no consistent thing that occurs when she sees into the future. It's terribly non-engaging. Again, I've already talked about this with the main villain. His powers are pretty cool, but it's done in a terribly uninteresting way. He just punches and pushes people. He doesn't do anything exciting with the powers that he has. Oh, the other power is a toxin, but with that, he just grabs them. The action scenes were just bland too. Cars ram into people multiple times in this movie, which sounds funny, and it is for the first couple times, but after a while, it gets terribly boring. The end fight was laughably bad. And I say this because there is so much potential with seeing into the future and what you could do to really amp up that action. But no, it's just done in a really boring way. Again, I don't read comics, so I'm not sure if Madame Web is a real character or not, but I'm not really sure what her powers were supposed to be beyond seeing into the future. They kind of allude to the fact that she can get into people's heads or interact with multiple people at once. Again, sort of fitting the theme of a spider web, but it was kind of confusing and they didn't really explain it. And they try to set her up at the end as some all-knowing mythical being, kind of like Professor X, but it just looked stupid. The camera also does this really annoying thing where it quickly zooms in and out during an intense action or dialogue scene, trying to make it look documentary style. I found it distracting. It seemed like they were trying to compensate for a boring sequence. Also, something that really annoyed me, this movie does that stupid Amazing Spider-Man 2 thing of hinting at future movies to come. Movies that look way more exciting than what we were given. So overall, I would not recommend this movie. I sometimes enjoy the so bad it's good, but this movie didn't have that at all. It was just boring. Minimal effort, no passion, no humanity thrown into it at all. It's insultingly unengaging. All right, I'm about to go into some spoilers. You've been warned. First of all, cut the references to Peter Parker, man. Why did Ben Parker and Peter Parker's mom have to exist in this movie? My God, it's so lame. I hate when a movie just can't stand on its own. It'd be kind of interesting if it was a good movie and then in the end they revealed that, the friend's name was Ben or something. I just hate when movies latch on to alternative media that we've already had a good time with and feel the need to cram it in to just give us that tiny sense of enjoyment because the entire rest of the movie is horrible. I apologize that I sound so angry or upset at this movie, but this is the worst type of bad movie. Boring. So the whole reason that the main villain wants to kill these 3 teenagers is because he has a vision of his future death, in which he dies by the hands of the 3 teenagers as spider girls or spider superheroes of some kind. And they actually looked pretty badass in those future scenes, but we only get about 30 seconds to a minute of it. It looks infinitely cooler than the movie we actually watched. It's frustrating. Give me that. Also, they say that the main villain was cursed with knowledge or something because he stole the spider and now can see his future death. What? Oh my God, I also forgot the early 2000s trope of having access to every single camera and piece of electronic equipment because you hacked into the NSA database. It's just such lazy writing. To go back to the end fight, I found this really weird and terribly uninteresting because our main villain is just punching and pushing people down. He's trying to supposedly kill the 3 teenage girls, but he doesn't focus on them. He focuses on Cass. Why? But he doesn't even do anything to her. He just pushes her down and punches. And Madam Web is using her powers that she's now in tune with to just tell the teenagers to block. Duck, 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 duck. They also have very corny lines, which I did enjoy, such as villains saying things like, patch me in. Wise spider people saying things like, I'll be here to tell her the truth when she's ready. Oh, they even have stupid references to with great power comes great responsibility. And I found our main character so boring that even her superhero one-liner at the end fell really flat for me. It was something along the lines of, you didn't see them in your future, you saw me, or something, which in a more exciting movie would be kind of cool, but here it was just kind of cringy. When I was saying earlier in the review that they scratched the surface of the script, I think they could have added a lot of depth to the villain, dive deeper into the psychological struggle of seeing your own death and how that would affect you. If he was a character that didn't necessarily want to kill, but saw his own death by the hands of these 3 girls, wrestling with whether he should do it or not. I bet there's a lot more I could say about this movie that I'm just not thinking of right now. I don't plan to see this again. At the end of the day, this movie is just terribly uninteresting. So please, guys, let me know what you thought of this movie in the comments below. If you're gonna see it, if you've already seen it, what you thought of it. Till next time.